Evelyn didn't cry when she packed the bag. She didn't slam drawers or throw things into it with anger. She folded everything slowly, methodically. Her Bible went in first, its corners softened by time and prayer. Then her passport, the last photograph she had of Leonard, creased in the middle, the colors fading, but his smile still sharp enough to cut through the ache. And then her notebook, the one with the banking information and the one thing she had never told Ryan about, the settlement. She didn't move as fast as she used to. Her knees ached when she bent, her back stiffened if she stood too long. But her mind, still sharp enough to notice the way Ryan's voice had shifted over the years, the way Mama turned into Ma, then Ma into silence. Sharp enough to know when love had soured into convenience, but she hadn't come this far, hadn't raised him, fed him, clothed him, prayed for him, just to watch him strip her name off the mailbox and call it a new beginning. It happened on a Wednesday. The sky was clear, and the house smelled of lemon polish and fabric softener. Evelyn had just vacuumed the living room. She still liked doing that herself. Her niece said she should stop, said she was too old, said she should rest. But Evelyn didn't believe in letting age dictate dignity. Dust didn't care how old you were, and neither did she. That's when they came in, Ryan and Natalie. Ryan with his sunglasses still on indoors, earbuds swinging around his neck like he was on a music video set. And Natalie, mid-laugh on a Bluetooth call, heels clicking like the ticking of a countdown. They didn't even look at Evelyn. Just walked past her like she was the help. Ryan paused, turned back, smiled like someone who had already rewritten the story in his head. "Hey, next time you use the Dyson, can you empty it out?" he said like it was a casual favor. "We've got people coming to see the place this weekend." Evelyn blinked. "People?" "Realtors," he added, "just to get a feel for the value. You know, market research." She stared at him, still holding the vacuum. "You selling the house?" He chuckled like she'd asked if he was joining the circus. "Not yet, just thinking ahead. Gotta explore all our options, right?" "Our options?" That's when he said it. "You're a guest now, Mama. It's still your space, of course, but legally, well, you know how it is." Her hand tightened around the vacuum handle. She didn't yell, didn't ask him how he could look her in the face and say that, didn't ask if he remembered the nights she rocked him when he had night terrors, or the time she skipped a job interview to attend his science fair. She just nodded. That night, she packed the bag for real. 2 dresses, 1 pair of sneakers. Her wedding band, which she hadn't worn since Leonard passed but still kept in the little pouch by her bedside. And the notebook. Ryan didn't ask where she was going. Natalie didn't care. They had what they wanted. Or so they thought. Evelyn checked into a budget motel near a gas station that blinked like it was trying to stay awake. The heater in the room wheezed like it had asthma, and the bed creaked when she sat. But it was hers. Heron, no one could call her a guest here. She sat at the desk, opened the notebook. There was a number inside, one she hadn't dialed in 14 years. Doris, a woman from a non-profit who once helped her when a tenant tried to sue over a plumbing leak. She tried the number, once, twice, disconnected. She sighed. Then she remembered someone else. CJ, Clarence James Bell, Leonard's old friend, retired lawyer, sharper than a snake's tooth and twice as stubborn. They hadn't spoken in years. Still, she picked up the phone. It rang 6 times. Then a tired, raspy voice answered. "This better be Jesus or trouble." Evelyn smiled. "Maybe it's both." "Evie?" "Yeah, it's me. I need to talk." He didn't ask why. Didn't need to. Real friends don't forget who showed up with a casserole when your appendix burst. They met the next morning at a diner just off Interstate 20. The kind of place where the coffee was still poured from heavy pots, and the waitresses called you Hon, no matter your age. CJ looked older, a little more gray in the beard, but those eyes still cut through nonsense like butter. "You look like hell," he said, sliding into the booth. "Good morning to you too," Evelyn replied. CJ sipped his coffee, black, no sugar, just like Leonard used to drink it. Then he set it down. "Tell me everything," he said. "Don't skip, don't soften, just say it plain." So she did, and by the end of it, CJ didn't look surprised. He looked ready. The diner's neon sign flickered outside like a heartbeat in the rain, casting blue and pink glows across Evelyn's wrinkled face. She didn't speak for a long while after finishing her story. Just sat there, fingers wrapped around the chipped coffee mug, eyes staring through the window like she was watching memories instead of traffic. CJ leaned back, silent too. Not because he didn't have things to say, oh, he had plenty, but because some stories deserve space to breathe, especially when they come from a woman who has swallowed her pride for years. "So," he finally said, "he really told you you're just a guest now?" Evelyn nodded slowly, like it still didn't feel real. Didn't even flinch. CJ shook his head, muttering something about ungrateful children and how money messes with people's souls. Evelyn reached into her bag and pulled out the notebook. "He doesn't know," she said softly, tapping the spine with her thumb. "Know what? That I paid off this house 5 years ago? That I put the deed in a trust? That I never took my name off the papers, even when I let him think I had?" CJ blinked. "Wait, you mean—" "I own it," Evelyn said, a small fire flickering behind her tired eyes. "Every brick, every shingle. He just don't know it yet." CJ let out a low whistle. "You've been playing chess while they thought you were doing crosswords." She didn't smile. Not fully. There was too much grief in her chest to feel smug. This wasn't revenge. This was a promise. A vow she had made to Leonard the day they moved into that house. That no matter what happened, it would stay in the family and it would stay protected. "Why didn't you tell him?" CJ asked. Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. "Because I wanted to believe he loved me more than the house." CJ sighed, reached across the table, and gave her hand a squeeze. "Well," he said, "what's the plan now?" She didn't answer right away, just opened the notebook to the back page. Tucked inside was a printed email. The sender, Elliott and Nash Realty Group. The subject, offer on property at 1083 Coral Street. CJ scanned it, eyes narrowing. "They're trying to sell behind your back?" "Trying," Evelyn said, "but they're not getting a damn thing unless I hand it to them." CJ grinned, a slow, wolfish expression. "You feel like shaking the ground a little?" Evelyn looked up. "Yes." That afternoon, Evelyn visited the county clerk's office. Walked in wearing the same coat she wore to Leonard's funeral. Black wool, heavy, respectable. She waited quietly in line, her heart thumping like a drum in her chest. Then she stepped up to the counter and handed the woman behind the glass her documents. The woman, young, probably no older than Ryan, frowned as she skimmed through them. "You're looking to transfer?" "No," Evelyn said calmly. "I'm filing a legal notice of ownership, putting the deed under protective lock." The woman blinked. "You're the sole trustee?" "Yes." "And you want to lock it?" "Yes." The woman paused. "Is there a reason?" Evelyn leaned forward, voice steady but firm. "My son tried to erase me, and now I'm making sure he never does it again." By the time Evelyn got back to the motel, it was nearly dusk. She peeled off her coat, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the little lamp flickering in the corner. Her phone buzzed, a text from Ryan. "Hey, Natalie said you left the vacuum out. You good?" She stared at it. Then she laughed. It was soft at first, almost like a cough, but then it rolled out of her, deep and full, like something she hadn't let out in years. The gall of it, the absurdity, the absolute cluelessness. She didn't respond. 2 days later, a black sedan pulled into the driveway of the Coral Street house. A man in a crisp navy suit stepped out, briefcase in hand. He rang the bell. Natalie answered. "Yes?" she asked, chewing gum like she had better things to do. "Are you Ms. Natalie Green?" "Yeah, why?" "I'm looking for the current legal owner of this property." "That would be my fiancé," she said smugly. "Ryan Carter." The man checked his file. "No, ma'am. According to county records, the deed is in a living trust controlled by Evelyn Carter." This home cannot be sold, subdivided, or leveraged for financial gain without her explicit consent. Natalie blinked. What? Inside, Ryan came to the door, barefoot, wearing gym shorts. Hey, is something wrong? The man extended the document. Mr. Carter, this house does not legally belong to you. Ryan's face drained of color. But she said she left. The man smiled politely. She never left what was hers. You just assumed she did. Back at the motel, Evelyn sat by the window sipping tea. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a voicemail. It was Ryan. Mom, I don't know what's going on. I thought we were on the same page. Why would you? Can we talk? Evelyn didn't play the rest. She simply whispered into the quiet room. You called me a guest. Now I'm giving you the chance to knock. Evelyn sat alone at the park bench that overlooked the duck pond where she used to take Ryan as a boy. The same pond where he once chased breadcrumbs like they were treasure, where he once clung to her hand like she was the anchor to his world. Now her fingers were curled around a letter, folded once, no envelope. Just her handwriting on thick cream paper, steady, deliberate, not angry, just final. It had taken her an hour to write, but 30 years to build the strength to send. Ryan, you said I was a guest in my own home. You said it as if you were protecting your future, building something for your children. But I wonder if you ever saw what I gave up for you, what I held together with hands that never stopped shaking. This isn't revenge, it's remembrance. You forgot who scrubbed the kitchen tile after midnight so you could study in peace. You forgot the meals I skipped so you could have brand-name sneakers in 5th grade. You forgot the woman who slept on the hospital floor during your pneumonia because the chairs were all full. So let me remind you, the house you live in was built with my hands. The bricks don't just hold walls, they hold sacrifices. The mortgage was paid not with money, but with bone and prayer. I didn't leave you out of anger. I stepped aside to see if you'd invite me back with love. You didn't. So I'm reclaiming my place, not to control, not to punish, but to remind you that love built this. And love demands respect. If you want to come back, not just to the house, but to your mother, you'll have to learn how to knock. Mom. She tucked the letter into a legal envelope and handed it to CJ later that afternoon. He'd deliver it in person. No mail, no text, no chance for Ryan to dismiss it as noise. Evelyn wanted him to hold it, feel the weight of it. You sure? CJ asked. She nodded. It's time he feels what it's like to be left outside. When CJ handed Ryan the letter, there was no speech, no lecture, just the silence of a man who stood by someone who had been silenced too long. Ryan stood on the porch, staring at the envelope as if it burned. What's this? CJ didn't flinch. Your mother's last word until you earn another. That night, Evelyn slept better than she had in months, not because everything was resolved, but because for the first time in a long time, she was no longer waiting to be loved. For 3 weeks, the house was quiet. No calls, no texts, no sudden knocks. Just the hum of a refrigerator and the occasional chirp from the backyard robins that Evelyn had grown fond of feeding. She had expected resistance, maybe even rage, but not this, not the hollow silence that followed her letter. Until one Sunday morning, the doorbell rang, not once, but twice, softly, almost apologetically. She opened it to find Ryan standing there, hands by his side, eyes low, shoulders drooped, not with anger, but something closer to shame. He wasn't holding flowers, or gifts, or clever apologies, just a folder, and in it, an old photo she hadn't seen in decades. It was a picture from his high school graduation. She stood beside him in that faded blue dress, his arm awkwardly around her, both of them smiling through exhaustion. Her eyes had been swollen from working a night shift, but her smile that day had been full. I found this, he said, his voice cracked. Been looking at it every night. Evelyn didn't say a word. She stepped aside just enough to let him in. Not fully, but far enough that he understood it wasn't a rejection. It was an invitation. To try. They sat at the kitchen table. Same table where she'd once taught him to tie his shoes. Same table where he'd eaten mac and cheese while complaining about homework. I was wrong, Ryan said after a long silence. About the house. About everything. Evelyn looked at him, really looked, not at the successful man he had become, but at the boy inside, the one who used to wait for her at the school gates, holding her hand like it was home. "Why now?" she finally asked. He blinked. "Because I read your letter, and for the first time I saw you, not just as mom, but as a person, a woman who carried more than I ever realized." A tear escaped her eye, but she didn't brush it away. "And CJ," Ryan continued, "he didn't yell. He didn't fight. He just stood there and made me feel small, not because of who he is, but because I saw the kind of son I should have been." Evelyn nodded slowly. "You still can be," she said. They didn't hug right away. There was too much weight between them. But as he stood to leave, Ryan turned back and whispered, "Can I come back tomorrow?" And Evelyn, for the first time in a long time, smiled. "Only if you knock." He did, then walked out into the sun. The days that followed were slow, quiet, and strangely healing. Ryan came back the next day, and the next after that. Sometimes he brought groceries. Sometimes he just brought his presence. He didn't try to fix things too quickly. He didn't apologize every time he spoke. He just showed up. And Evelyn, she noticed, not just the consistency, but the humility. The way he sat with her now, not as someone who saw her as a burden, but as someone finally trying to understand who she was before she became mom. One evening, as the sun bled orange over the quiet street, Ryan found Evelyn on the porch, sipping tea. "Can I ask you something?" he said. She nodded without looking at him. "Why didn't you ever tell me how hard it really was?" Evelyn smiled faintly, eyes still on the horizon. "Because I was afraid you'd feel guilty, or worse, you'd hate me for not giving you more." Ryan's voice lowered. "But I did feel both anyway." "I know," she whispered, "but at least now you're sitting beside me, not across a courtroom with a pen in your hand, ready to erase me." He bowed his head. There was a long silence. Not heavy this time, just full. A week later, Ryan brought CJ. The boy was hesitant at first, but Evelyn, wearing a deep blue dress she hadn't worn in years, opened the door with the same grace she had once used to welcome Ryan's childhood friends. CJ stepped in, wide-eyed and awkward, but polite. He shook her hand firmly. And then, the most unexpected thing happened. He looked around the living room, the photos, the books, the lived-in furniture, and said, "This house feels like it has stories." Evelyn chuckled. "You have no idea." That evening, they sat around the dinner table. 3 generations, 1 family. No bitterness, no power plays, just laughter over slightly burnt chicken and stories about Ryan's terrible teenage haircuts. When CJ excused himself to get more soda, Evelyn turned to Ryan. "I like him," she said softly. "He sees you, the good parts." Ryan's eyes glistened. "He sees you too. Said he wants to come back and hear more of your stories." Evelyn leaned back in her chair, surprised. "No one's asked to hear my stories in years." "Well," Ryan said, smiling, "you raised one story, and now that story is learning to listen." That night after they left, Evelyn sat on the porch alone. The stars above were quiet, but for the first time in years, they didn't feel so distant. Because now when someone knocked on her door, they stayed. And the silence that used to hurt, it had been replaced by something warmer. Hope. 3 months later, Evelyn found herself standing in a room she never imagined she'd see again. A lecture hall. The air was filled with soft murmurs, the shuffle of papers, and the anticipation of an incoming speaker. She clutched her purse tightly, uncertain. Out of place, perhaps. But Ryan had insisted she come. He didn't tell her much, only that the topic would be hidden labor and unspoken heroes. When the lights dimmed, Evelyn's eyes caught Ryan walking up to the podium. Her son, confident, calm, but not rehearsed. He spoke like a man who'd lived what he was about to say. He took a breath. "My name is Ryan Walker. I'm a public defender, a father, a son. Today I want to tell you about someone who never had a resume, but who taught me more than any judge ever has." A hush swept over the audience. She never took a day off, not because she didn't need one, but because she wasn't allowed to. She raised a boy in a world that judged her more than it paid her. She held her home together with expired coupons and faith, and for years, I didn't see her. Not really. Evelyn's heart began to pound. I thought success meant distance, that if I could escape where I came from, I'd be clean of it. But I learned that my strength was never mine alone. It came from her hands, from her sleepless nights, from her sacrifices. A pause. Today she's here. Gasps, eyes turned toward the back of the room. She taught me that showing up isn't about grand gestures. It's about soft things, gentle things, things the world forgets to value until they're gone. Evelyn felt her chest tighten as Ryan's voice cracked. "I see you now, Mom. Thank you." The applause that followed was thunderous, but Evelyn didn't hear it. She was too busy wiping tears from her cheeks. After the lecture, people approached her. Students, parents, strangers. "I'm raising a son alone, too," one woman whispered. "Your story gave me courage," said another. For the first time in her life, Evelyn didn't feel invisible. Back at home that evening, Evelyn found something waiting on her porch. A rocking chair, new, sturdy, wrapped in a bow. Ryan stepped out from behind the door. "Thought it was time you had a throne," he said. She laughed, touching the wood, and then looked up at him with eyes full of warmth. "I don't need a throne, Ryan. I just needed my son." They sat there under the same stars she used to fear in silence, now joined by love, by healing, by legacy. CJ came out later, holding a notebook. "Grandma, ready to tell me about the day you scared off that snake in the kitchen with a broom?" Evelyn grinned. "Only if you're ready to listen." And so he did, because now the house wasn't just full of memories, it was full of listeners.